So Hamid, the founder of Plooto, went through two actually pretty big pivots. He starts off selling a solution that uses crypto to help SMB owners make payments. And he admitted this during the show. I mean, this is classic first time founder stuff, which is you kind of think of something, you think it sounds kind of cool, and you just go after it, right? And yeah, sure, you use lean startup stuff and you iterate on product, but you're solving a problem that frankly isn't really a real problem. And it took him a bit to realize this, but he did. He realized it and he shifted a couple of times. And now he fully admits it, right? Like before startup mode, there's research mode. And he did, after a few years, did do the real research to realize that the problem isn't so much for SMB owners making payments, it's everything else that goes around making payments. It's the entire workflows, it's the organization. And so he shifted to like an ARAP platform, accounts receivable, accounts payable platform. I think what you're going to learn on this episode is just the importance of doing research, talking to customers in a way that isn't so focused on, hey, what do you think of my idea? And is much more focused on who are you as a customer? What is your day like? What are your problems? In order to make sure that you're climbing up the best hill that you could climb up, right? What's happening otherwise is you've got these little tiny mountains and you're kind of going up them because you think it's kind of cool, but it's hard, it's full of obstacles. And even if you got there, it's not even a big opportunity. If you do real research, you can find the big problems, the ones that are really worth solving. And if you listen to this episode, you'll learn how. Welcome to the Product Market Fit Show, brought to you by Mistral, a seed stage firm based in Canada. I'm Pablo. I'm a founder turned VC. My goal is to help early stage founders like you find product market fit. Welcome to the Product Market Fit Show. Today we have Hamid, the CEO of Plooto, and today we'll be talking about how to pivot. You have a really interesting story. You haven't pivoted once, you've pivoted at least kind of two or three major times. In fact, you started off as a Bitcoin company back in 2015, and now you're kind of in the accounts payable, accounts receivable space. So quite the transition. And I think we're going to learn a lot about how to kind of like see signals and react to them. And the fact that startups are rarely a straight line. So let's dive into it. Maybe you can tell us just a little bit of context, like how did everything start? What was going on in 2015?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I started the early part of my career at Bank of Montreal, and I was in personal commercial banking, and that was like the first time that I was exposed to how other businesses manage their finances and manage their banking relationship, their cash flow, and so on. And I spent a couple of years there, but I really didn't enjoy. I didn't see myself being at the bank for too long. So I left to start a gaming company with my co-founder, Sergey. He's our technical co-founder, and I basically took care of all the business stuff. When you run your own company and you're a small business, you pretty much do everything. And that's exactly what I did. I had to take care of vendor management, supply management, payables, receivables, working with our bookkeeper to reconcile our books. I would spend like Saturdays just trying to see who needed to pay us and who we needed to pay. And we had suppliers all around the world and publishers all around the world too. So just like being a small business owner meant I had to do all of that and deal with all the banks at the same time. So we were fortunate enough. We were one of the few small businesses to be able to, like, especially in gaming, to be able to like grow. And we were eventually acquired by a larger publisher. So when time came to think about our next idea, we really started to think about where do we spend the most amount of time? What were the biggest friction points that we had trying to build our company? And managing payables was one of the most painful things to do, especially when it involves international payments, when it involves wires and so on. So we wanted to build a really next generation payment platform. And this is around 2015, like mid 2015. And this was when Bitcoin was starting to be on the news and people were, ordering pizza with Bitcoins, and you could start to use it in different places. So there was a lot of chatter around how this could really change payments as we know it. And we wanted to be in the forefront of that. So the first iteration of Plooto was to do payments, business payments on blockchain, and Bitcoin was like the only coin at that time, on the only cryptocurrency at that time. So we built it on Bitcoin, and then other things came, and we started a multi I guess crypto wallet. It was the next iteration of it. But it just never went anywhere because businesses that we were targeting were not interested in it. But one thing that they told us is that they really loved like the features we had built that allowed you to make payments easier. They just had no idea what the hell this thing called Bitcoin was and why it was even.
Yeah, because maybe on that, like what you're going to traditional businesses and you're trying to convince them, hey, you should like hold Bitcoin and transact in Bitcoin, or were you trying to convert their USD or CAD to Bitcoin and reconvert on the other side? Like, what was the pitch?
So the pitch was, keep your bank account, like use the same like money that you have, your same operating account, but in the back end, we would exchange that like local currency to Bitcoin, and then we would send it to another exchange, and then they would basically convert it to the local currency and then pay your supplier. But one thing that SMBs didn't want to deal with is hedging the different currencies, and Bitcoin was just used to like go up and down so much during that time that that just didn't want to take that risk, and there wasn't anything that was pegged to the U.S. dollars that you could that could fix this for you. So we ran into so many issues of our customers just having to explain the solution to our customers, and they just didn't understand it. Or they even cared about it, right? Like to them, it was like, hey, here's my money, deliver it to my supplier. I don't care how you do it. I don't care about the technology. I just want it, in the words of Steve Jobs, I just want it to work. And that's exactly what like our customers wanted.
Did you even get to like did you build out a platform and then have customers transact, or was this more even stuck in just the first like conversations that never really translated to something real?
No, we had like about 10, 15 small businesses on the platform. So we actually had like a lot of it built. We had the UI, the UX. We had built the wallets. We were testing on blockchain, and we were processing payments. But the customers that were initially like, I had to personally like call every customer, by the way, to like get them. It wasn't just like people were coming to us. Like I literally had to build a relationship with every business owner that wanted to use us. But we were just getting feedback that this is way too difficult, and they don't understand it. They don't understand the value of it. And I think that was like one of the key lessons that I learned, is that if the product is not really, I mean, they use the word 10x to describe it, but if the product is not 10x better and making your life 10x simpler or better or cheaper, then customers would just like walk away and would give up on that idea. So we constantly ran into this wall of just trying to educate the customer. So we realized that maybe in 10 years the value would be very clear to especially small business owners. But at this time, it was just like too early, and it would have taken us so many years to be able to get there.
I think that's just on that point, and especially I think for first time founders. I remember myself back in the day with GymTrack. Like you don't realize the power of status quo. I mean, the thing you build might actually be better, but the difference between customers jumping on board and doing the work to learn about it and not is how much better, because status quo has worked so far. Like that's why it's status quo, and people generally speaking don't let go of it all that easily. So I'm with you on that. Those cliches they're cliches for a reason, I guess, is that
I
they're
mean, we're
pretty
still
true.
using checks for B2B payments, right? And checks were invented around 1500s. So, it's been many, many centuries that we've used this product, but we continue to use it because it's just so simple. You literally write someone's name on it, you put it into an envelope, and then you send it. You don't need to, like, how can you make, like, that's what you are competing with, right? So if you're building a fintech product, you really need to think about how can I make the experience like I literally write a name, I press a button, and it's gone. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to replace checks.
And so how long were you on this kind of, let's call it phase one, like this Bitcoin play? How long did that last? And just walk us through the thinking of, you're getting these signals, like how do you start thinking about, okay, this is not going to be the thing?
Well, it lasted around 6 months. I think we were also fortunate enough because we had just sold our company previously. So Sergey and I were not in an immediate rush to like find a solution for this. So we were in a fortunate position that probably a lot of founders are not, because a lot of founders, I look at my first company. I was working at Bank of Montreal, and then at night I would come in and with Sergey's help, we were thinking about ideas for games to build on mobile. And that's the journey that most entrepreneurs go through. But for 6 months, we talked to customers. We tried to work on our pitch deck to write our idea down. Like, how is this better? Like, where do we fit into this world? During that time, we were also talking to investors as well to see if there's any interest in terms of like what we were building. And there was just some fundamental questions around, why would anybody want to use this? How is this better? How is this going to make it cheaper, better, faster? And we just couldn't answer that to the extent that it would get us either a customer or investor or that initial traction. So within 6 months, we basically went to our customers and we're like, well, what do you like about what we've built? And that was like the first pivot, because they told us that they really loved the features we had built around just like making payments easier, like in terms of, okay, if you want to send an international payment, you have to think about how an international payment is done. You need like 2 pages of information, which are basically your wire instructions. And then wire instructions have an intermediary section, you have a recipient section. Like, so there's tons of things that you need to know before you can send a wire transfer. And we didn't need that. And customers just absolutely love that. Just being able to like just put in someone's email address, say which country they're in, and then be able to get the payment out there. So little things like that customers would come back to us and they said, like, this is where we want. And I think that's where we realized that even if we were to take out the Bitcoin and the entire blockchain component out of the equation, the actual application still had a lot of value for our customers, but it just wasn't packaged in a way that customer would be appealing to our customers. And I think that's a really important part for entrepreneurs to understand, is that maybe like you can't fall in love with the solution and just commit to that solution wholeheartedly, because ultimately you need to find enough customers, enough of a critical mass of customers out there that want to pay for this product. And if they absolutely don't love this product, no one's gonna pay for it. So you have to like constantly talk to the customers and figure out, what out of this whole thing do you like and you're willing to pay for it, and what is it out of this whole thing that you don't like. Another thing that we had built, for example, is integration with accounting software. And customers like absolutely love that, because they didn't have to go and manually enter their transactions and they didn't have to manually reconcile anything with the accounting software. So those were like some of the key features that customers like absolutely loved, that we basically took out, and we basically released a new version of Plooto in 2016, like early to mid 2016, which was the first version of Plooto, which is just send payments using the bank accounts you have, and we'll deliver it for you, regardless of where the suppliers are.
So that was pivot one, was like from Bitcoin enabled to traditional fiat, right? But still focused on payments and sending payments. Curious on that. You mentioned kind of talking to your customers and getting insights from them. Did you limit yourself to those kind of 10, 15 customers that were using it? Or did you do like any broader sort of, discovery around that transition?
So I personally didn't do that. We relied a lot more on investor feedback and the initial set of customers that we had of the small business owners that we worked with. However, if I were to go back and think about launching the next business idea, I would definitely do that. Then I would just probably spend the first year not building anything at all, and actually just talking to all the potential buyers to really understand the pain points that they have. And in fact, that's why working backwards from customer value is Plooto's number one leadership principle right now. And everything that we try to do at Plooto is to first define what the outcome is and what the value is. And if that outcome has zero value to the customer, we don't build it at all. So we spend a lot of time, for example, right now, just trying to like talk to customers and discover what do they really want solved. And then we go and build something. Whereas we did it a little bit the other way around. And maybe that's why it took like up to a year to like figure it out, is that we just want to build stuff. There is an element of, yes, go out, build stuff and iterate. But I think if you have not discovered what that initial pain point is, you're building in a direction that is far away from solving the gap that the customer has. And I think my preference nowadays is to understand that gap and then start to build and iterate towards that solution.
I 100% agree. And the way I've broached this subject a few different times actually on the show and in other places. The way I look at it is, before startup mode, there's research mode. And I mean, you can go through it explicitly or you can skim by it, but one way or another, you're going to have to face it. The reality is most founders love to build, and like that's why they're founders, even if they're not technical. I mean, they want to create a business, they want to create a product. They're not academics first and foremost. And so like they're not, and then if you look at the literature, like look at Eric Ries or you look at all that stuff, it's all about how do you build and iterate and kind of go through that. But before that, there's this research mode stage, which the more you make that an explicit piece and you kind of go deep on it, it's just going to save you so much time down the road. And it's going to put you in such a better position to be more likely to ultimately create that value, which at the end of the day, value delivery is what this is all about, right? Everything kind of flows out from there.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. I recently attended an event with the CEO of Picasso, which is like a split home purchase, like a second home split purchasing platform. And he actually, one thing like it clicked in my head is that he spent an entire year going around the United States, talking to real estate agents, talking to potential home buyers to really understand like the pain point associated with buying a home, a vacation home. And he didn't build anything for a year. And and looking back at my own journey, like I would 100% agree with that we as builders, we don't spend enough time thinking about the customer's pain point, because we're like, well, I'm the entrepreneur, I know better. And I'm just going to build it. And then, because we have this romanticized version, like view of how entrepreneurship works, especially if you're a first time founder, you think, Steve Jobs goes into a dark room, comes out with like iPad, right? And you don't realize, the actual work that it takes to really identify not only customer pain, but also the gap within the market, how you compare to the alternatives that exist. So you got to spend a lot of time actually writing down all of your thoughts and going through it over and over. And I would say that's where you have to do a lot of your iterative thinking on paper before you actually build something. But yeah, I did it the other way.
You know what, though? Part of it is, I don't know if you want to call it like a psychological or a social phenomenon, which is that person you just mentioned, that founder who spent a year, talking to real estate agents. For a whole year, people asked him, "Hey, like, what are you up to these days?" And he had to say, like, I don't know yet. Like, I'm talking to people. That's not, nobody wants to be in that position, right? Like, people want to be able to say, oh, I'm building this startup, doing this, and you have to put up with that for a year. Like, it seems like a small thing, but I actually think that's a huge reason why there's so much momentum towards like, well, let's just pick a thing and like do it.
For sure, because that part of it is not sexy, right?
That's right.
It's like, talking to 500 customers and, just like thinking about a problem just by yourself and then bouncing ideas with like advisors. That part is not sexy, right? Like what people want is like ship code, right? And get it in front of the customer and iterate, because that's been like, that's been told to us and that's been like sold to us as tech entrepreneurs so much that, just get the MVP out. Well, what is the MVP about, right? And I think just like not answering those core fundamental questions before you build the MVP mindset is fantastic once you have a thesis. And that thesis has been like, you feel very strongly about that thesis. But if you haven't done that homework, then you're just going to build something that nobody wants.
I mean, again, that's your first pivot. What happens at this point? You go out with this non-Bitcoin solution. What sort of feedback do you start getting at that point?
So we actually around that time we started to do well because one of the things that we had built is we had built this integration with Zero accounting platform. So a lot of Zero accountants or SMBs that used Zero started to use us because it helped them automate a lot of like their payments. However, the mistake that we made around that time is that we assumed that PayPal was our main competitor, and we really tried to emulate PayPal in their design because our thinking was, okay, well, PayPal sends international payments. PayPal is a very popular solution, but people don't really like you to use PayPal because it doesn't give them any other tools beyond just sending payments internationally. So what we could do if we're targeting small businesses would like to see some automation features built, and we're going to build those automation capabilities into our platform, and we're going to compete with PayPal. Well, if you're going to compete with PayPal, well, PayPal's free. So how do you compete with free? And I think initially we started to do that, and we started to get a lot of traction. So we actually did that from 2016 to 2018. We didn't charge anything for our services, and that started to grow really fast because, of course, people are going to love a free product. If you're not charging anything and you're just taking on all the costs and you're dealing with fraud and you're dealing with like everything and you're charging nothing or next to nothing because we were charging like $1 per transaction. And what we realized is that around 2018, we were seeing a good amount of growth. We had around like 1,500 customers that were using the product, but we also had a lot of customers who would come in, sign up, and not stick around or do anything. So the adoption was happening, but the retention was not there. Most of the usage was coming from a handful of customers, not a handful of customers, probably like a few hundred customers, but the larger portion of the customer base was maybe using us once a quarter or like once a year type of thing. And when we went to raise our Series A, we actually like completely failed because like every investor looked at our usage metrics and they basically came back to us and they're like, well, you have something here, but it's not enough for me to give you millions of dollars to go and scale it because you got a leaky bucket basically. So that was when we started to think about, okay, how do we solve this problem? Because we had something that obviously a lot of people like to use. When you have 1,000 customers, 1,000 businesses on your platform, you've obviously built something that people care about. However, how do we now turn it into a business? Because there's a difference between building a product that people want to actually building a business that has the unit economics that can support you growing and spending on marketing and hiring people, and be able to like eventually have a decent return for your investors, because that's the only way that you're going to be able to raise capital is you need to communicate how you're going to return that money times 3 or times 5. So what we then realized is that, okay, we need to really actually go and build a business model that is not like PayPal, because, if you look at the history of PayPal, they were a pretty crappy business for a very, very long time until eBay bought them. And well, we don't have someone like eBay, so how do we make that happen? And that's when we, again, went back to our customers. We did close to maybe like 700 interviews. We did surveys. There was a 6-month period where we talked to every customer who would sign up. And we said, okay, what is it about our platform you like? What is it that you don't like? If we were to turn off Plooto, what would you do tomorrow? And the number one feedback that we got from everybody was that, we made their lives easier, because as small businesses, they don't have time to worry about all of these auxiliary things that you have to do in order to just run your business. And they love Plooto, and it was at a price that they could also afford, because they can't just go to a bank and get payment automation from a bank or a treasury solution. As you know, I used to sell treasury solution at Bank of Montreal, and that's what we charged, thousands of dollars per month to get a business to use treasury solution. Well, SMBs couldn't afford that, so they were coming to us. So when we realized that, we actually realized that payment processing is not our business. Payment processing is table stake, but what we really want is to help them save time as small business owners, and then offer the solution at a price that they could afford versus what they're getting it from the banks. So when that happened, we completely changed our business model. We started to focus on the automation part of the business, the application part of the business, and less on the payment processing. And we also introduced a subscription package, which we had never done. We went from $0 and just paying a couple of dollars per transaction to now we're asking our customers to pay $25 a month plus usage fee based on the transactions that they were doing. So the cost significantly increased for any business that was using it. And we had no idea what this is going to do to our business, but we knew that if we don't do something, we were going to run out of money, right? Like we had maybe like another 6 or 7 months of like cash left, and we would have had to like shut down the business if we didn't do something drastic. And we could not raise money from outside investors unless we were getting some like terrible terms. So we said, okay, why don't we just go to our customer and ask them to pay us? And that's exactly what we did. We really like took all those lessons from the 700 interviews, repackaged the business, repackaged our pricing, and we
Was it a
introduced.
different? Just to be clear, was it a different product or just a messaging change and a pricing change?
It was a messaging and pricing change. So it's basically just a business model. Like I'm sorry, the pricing model. The pricing model just like really changed, and so the product remained the same, but it gave us an inclination of where the product needs to go. But we didn't have money to hire engineers at that time, so we couldn't just build it. We had to get the resources just to be able to survive first. We had to put out the fire that was going to burn the entire house down. We repriced it, changed our, all of our landing pages, all of our messaging, and we went back to our customers and we're like, hey, like, this is what we're going to have to do. We're very sorry. You were paying, nothing. Now you got to start paying something. And if you stay with us, this is where we're going to invest the money. And this is where we're going to take the product. And we did that initially with a cohort of customers, with a few cohorts. So every month from July, June, July, August, September, we ran the test with all the new customers that were coming in. So we kept everybody on the old pricing and we just tested it. And we actually saw that like the usage was through the roof, because anybody who would come in, they would pay a $30 fee. And so they really wanted to be there. Otherwise, why would you pay a $25 fee? And once we saw that cohort data, we knew that this was the right decision. So we went back to our customers and we said, hey, we're going to give you a few months of free, but we're going to put you on a pricing plan. And we were forecasting that maybe 30% of customers would stick around, but over 82% of customers converted in October of 2019 to subscription pricing plus usage. So when that happened, like we literally eliminated our burn overnight. And that was like the first point where we actually, like for the first time ever, we had some resources to be able to like go and build the product and hire support and be able to like sustain ourselves.
That's a pretty crazy story, honestly. Just the fact that you could go from free to, whatever, $30 a month and only experience like 15-20% of your customer base churning. Let me ask you something else, going just backwards a little bit. Over those 2 years, you were doing effectively payment processing. It was free. And then there's this kind of outside catalyst, maybe a runway that prompted you to reevaluate and do this shift. Like, what do you think made you not see it earlier? Or like, was there any way to see it earlier? Were you looking at it one way, but should have been looking at it the other way? I'm just trying to, again, thinking about it from like a listener perspective and a first time founder, early stage founder, really doing something that clearly is getting enough pull. Did you have a sense of what maybe it's not enough, but you just kind of kept powering through? Like maybe just walk us through that.
Yeah, I think ultimately it really looking back at those like first like 3 4 years of our company's history, we were really focused on just building a product, right? Like as a I'm a product founder, my co-founder is a technical co-founder, so we really spent a lot of time just thinking about the product and not really thinking about turning it into a business, and I think what made sense from a business perspective sometimes doesn't make sense from a product perspective, but you have to do it. So I would say that ultimately it just really goes back to that initial thesis, and it really doing your research as much as possible around the customer pain, around the gap in the market, around the alternatives that are available. Because a lot of customers would be like, the number one feedback we would get from our customers be like, why do I have to pay $2 for a transaction when e-transfer is $1, right? They would not look at the value of the software you've built. They would just literally comparing you to something they know. And they would discount all the other features that you've built. So you really need to like get into the psyche of that customer. And I think one of the main reasons that it took us so long is because we were just so focused on building a product versus building a business. And if I can go back in my journey and redo this all over again, as I mentioned, I would just like really try to think about how to build a business first and try to answer all those questions.
It's funny. The other thing I'll point out, and this is just something that struck me now, is when we talk about customer interviews, we talk about this research piece, the number seems to be way higher than I thought. It's more like 500. I mean, I would have assumed do like 20 or 30 of these, but it's 700 here. LumiQ, which is a company you probably know, they did like 500. Cement was 500. Like those are really, that's closer to the number of interviews you probably need to do to really kind of get it right. Um, Much higher than I would have expected.
Yeah, and that's an argument we have internally like all the time with my product team, because it's been some time that I actually like worked on the product like the way I used to. So now we have these amazing product managers who like oversee a lot of these, and they come back and they say, oh, we interviewed 5 people, and I'm like, guys, you guys got to go back and talk to a lot more customers. You cannot just like make a pricing decision based on talking to like 5 customers. So it's funny that you say that, but like we have that internal argument all the time, and it's never enough. Like the more you talk to customers, because I feel like this is where we also get it wrong, because we've been sold this, Henry Ford saying of, if I wanted to, give customers what they wanted, I would have given them a faster horse. Whereas, like, the reality is like that's so far from the truth. The truth, it's really you don't take exactly what the customer says, but the customers also know all the answers, right? Maybe they can't communicate what the solution should be, which is what your job is, to really read between the lines and try to understand what the creative solution to this problem is going to be. But they all know what the problem is, and they all know that the way that they're doing certain things sucks, and they don't want to do it. But a lot of times as entrepreneurs, we fall in love with the car and the design of the car, and making sure the lights are like this and the wheels are like this, and then you realize that, oh, it actually, like, it doesn't even move. And that's what the customer wanted, is to go faster, and you've not delivered on that.
It's funny you mentioned that, because literally doing a podcast a few weeks ago with one of the founders of Stack Adapt, and his whole thing was exact same line, right? And it was, sometimes what you need to build is a faster horse. Like customers will pay for that, right? So it's like,
100%.
yeah, 100%. Cool. So you switch to this. Results are much better than expected. I guess after this pivot, you start to feel like you're getting true product market fit. Is that right?
For sure. I think that was the first time where we felt like, okay, there's something here. We just had close to 1,000 customers move over from a free product to $25 plus subscription. And now it's all about, how do we get this out there to many more customers? And I think that was like the first part of our journey, because up to that point we were like maybe like 15, 16 people. The business, if I needed something, I would just turn around and tell somebody, this is what it is, this is what we need to build or do. And that was the first moment where we set a price for our customers. They came in, they started to use the product, but now they had expectations, right? So now they wanted to have support given to them at a specific schedule. They wanted payment delivery, so they wanted SLA on a lot of things, right? So now you start asking the customers for a pay product, and they're fine with it, but now you need to deliver a different experience from what you're used to delivering. And that was like another big, I wouldn't say so much like a pivot, but being able to like scale and adapt as a founder of the company. Because I was for 3 years, and then prior to that for 4 years, my job was just to build, build, build. Whereas now my job has completely shifted to, okay, you don't have the time to build, but how do you now build an organization to deliver on that promise to your customers, but have somebody else actually do it. So for us, that also maybe like took another like year before we could really figure out how to actually scale the business, because we had never planned for that, because we were just like heads down building. And I would say that was not so much a pivot, but it's just like it's a complete shift in your mindset as a founder, going from building stuff to like, okay, you're not touching anything now. So what is my job? What is my role in the company? And that was another thing. And now today, the Plooto that you see today is still delivering on that original like promise we made to our customers in October of 2019, which is we're going to streamline all of your processes when it comes to your payments. And now we're just adding to that, right? Like we're making receivables automated. We're doing data capture automated. And now our vision is so much bigger than where we started. And now our vision is we want to automate the entire cash management for small businesses, because cash is the number one reason SMBs fail and they go out of business. And we want to make sure that doesn't happen. So we're just like delivering on that promise, but in a lot more, I guess, professional way than how we used to do it.
Perfect. Well, look, we'll stop there. Maybe a quick recap. You took us through 2015. Now we're in 2023, so it's been quite the journey. Started off with Bitcoin, moved to kind of payment processing, and then moved to really the tooling, the software platform that allows businesses to pay and get paid, which is a core function that obviously every single business needs to go through. And through it, I think we learned a lot about listening to customers, but also being kind of engineering success, right? By going through the motions of customer discovery, of true research, and really pulling out what customers need and building, as we said, a faster horse sometimes, right? Which is really the thing that gets money in the door and that creates a business, as you've been saying, and not just a product. So, thanks a lot for sharing that with us. It's been a great show.
Totally. And if I can, help any entrepreneur out there save a year or two of their life, not making the same mistakes I made, that's gonna be worth it.